Hello, everybody. My name is Tom Burns, and oh God, sorry, I've got my sound still on my tablet and on my phone. Sorry about that. Hello, everybody. My name is Tom Burns, and welcome to episode 2 of What's the News, the podcast that myself and my co-host, who I'll introduce you to shortly, Professor Wigglytuff, have started doing. Now, obviously, we've done many of these chats before, but we've decided to make it into an official, official podcast. We've decided to make it into a podcast because we might as well. Um, we have a few topics to talk about today. Professor Wigglytuff had a few things he wanted to talk about. There's a few things that I want to talk about as well. And obviously, anybody out there in the chat, if you would like to talk about something or ask any questions, feel free. We will answer the questions as good as we can. Obviously, keep the questions relatively controversial free, although here on this podcast we do literally, we don't have many limits on what we will talk about, to a certain extent, of course. But yeah, if you have any questions, please don't be afraid to get in the chat. Yes, today's topics are gonna be just to name a few. We're going to talk about Chris Hoy, the recent news that's come out about him. We're going to talk about Samantha Irvin, the recent news about her, of course. We're going to talk about. Hang on a minute. We're going to talk about. Where's it? We're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a bit about Donald Trump, and certain wrestlers that have sided with him. We're also going to talk about our favourite football teams from around the world as well, along with many other things. I think this is going to be quite a lengthy one today because there's a fair few things we want to get through. But before we get into the podcast, I have to, of course, introduce my co-host, Professor Wigglytuff. Welcome. Oh, hang on.
Wiggly to all of you. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all doing great. Over here, at least in the UK, it's starting to get a little bit chillier now. So as soon as you know it, we'll be through the autumn or fall, as our cousins across the pond call it. Winter will be here. Christmas will be here before you know it, and then we'll be ringing in 2025. We just have 2 full calendar months left of 2024, and in a lot happening over the next few weeks. Of course, no less a big presidential election going on across the pond, which is starting to hot up in exactly 2 weeks from today. In 2 weeks' time, our friends in America will be going to the polls, and who knows? Either way, we will obviously have a new president, whether it's the current vice president or a returning former president. But yes, I am sure we will discuss that in the next fortnight. But yeah, lots to get through this evening. Lots of interesting topics. As always, feel free to contribute in the chat. Any questions that you have for either of us or anything you want us to discuss, uh, feel free. There's nothing really that we won't discuss, but of course, be mindful about the topics that you want to discuss. We don't want to do anything too controversial or offensive. But yes, thank you, Tom, and over to you.
Okay, thank you. So let's get into our discussion for today. There's one thing I actually didn't discuss this with you before before we started the stream, but there is a topic that I wanted to talk about, and I want to get it out of the way first because I feel like it's going to be the probably the saddest topic of the day. So if we get it, I don't want to say get it out of the way because it's a bit disrespectful, but if we just get the saddest part out of the way first, and of course, and the thing slash person I wanted to talk about a little bit more. We did do a stream the other day about it. Liam Payne. Um, Now, I'm not going to talk like I talked on the stream the other day about how sad it is and stuff like that because obviously it is very sad. I'm just going to talk about a couple of things that have come out since and a couple of things that have happened since we streamed the other day. And I'll be honest, we've not really got a hell of a lot more details about exactly what happened. Apparently, it's been confirmed that he did indeed jump. But don't take my word for that. It's just from what I've read. But please do not take my word for it. Please go and look yourself. Um, but that is what I have read. Um, but I just want to just discuss a little bit about some of the things that I've seen online, some of the comments that I've seen, and just some of the disgusting things I've seen since Liam sadly passed away. And the first thing I want to reference and talk about is the fact that TMZ, and I didn't know about this until after the stream that we did the other day, because literally he passed away and we literally did a stream straight away. Like, I didn't have any time to do any sort of research or look up anything really, per se. I only knew the basic details. So I learnt this after the stream the other day. And TMZ, I'm not a fan of TMZ as it is because they are just money hungry and don't care who they hurt in the process. They literally, until they got so much backlash, they literally when they posted about Liam dying, they had like a slideshow of pictures, which you would assume would be like a few pictures of Liam, and obviously not dead, just a few pictures of Liam, a little tribute sort of thing. No, it was pictures. Literally, somebody took a picture of Liam's dead body before anybody had got there to help him. Someone took a picture of his dead body, and TMZ somehow got hold of it. Someone's obviously sent it into TMZ, and they posted it on their post announcing his death. They put that picture there. Can you imagine, right? If you're his mum or his dad, and you're clicking on this article because you want to try and find out more details about what's happened to your son, and you click on the pictures, and then you come across that picture. Can you imagine how scarring that is for his family? But this is what I'm saying about TMZ. They don't care. They don't care who they hurt in the process of what they do. They're just money hungry, and they're hungry to get their story out first for anybody else, because that's whoever gets their story out there first is bound to make the most money from from it, which is just disgusting. Think about the family. Think about the family clicking on that article and seeing that picture. What if Cheryl had clicked on that article and was reading about it and accidentally went on that picture and his son had seen it, 7 years old? Like, just think before you post these things. They did get rid of it because of fan backlash, not because they've got good hearts, but because of the backlash of Liam's fans. It got took down. But why upload it in the first place? Who the fuck's taking a picture of it in the first place? Like, who the hell is going over his body before anybody's even got there and taking a picture? Instead of seeing if they could possibly save him, they're taking a picture. Like, what is wrong with people? And then for TMZ to get that picture and actually put it on their post of Liam sadly passing away. Like, what the hell? Like, seriously? And then, so there was that. That's the thing that's pissed me off the most. And then there's a few other things, that have happened. A lot of people saying some disgusting things. Some people saying, I saw one comment, on a video of Liam, because there's been like nothing but non-stop videos about Liam on TikTok. And I saw on one video somebody commented something like, paying tribute to Liam. And somebody responded to that comment and said something along the lines of, I can't remember it word for word, but it was something along the lines of, this person had paid tribute and then said something about Louis, Louis, who is also in One Direction, said something about Louis, because Louis, he's lost a lot. He's lost his mum, his sister, and now he's lost one of his brothers. Obviously not biologically a brother, but basically might as well be a brother. And they were like, and this person paid tribute to Liam and said someone really needs to check on Louis. He's lost so much. He needs all the support he can get at the moment. And somebody put down, responding to that comment, saying, I wish Louis would just join Liam. Like, what the fuck? Like, what sort of disgusting comment is that? Regardless whether you're a fan of somebody or not. Like, you don't say stuff like that. That is just disgusting. Like, I just don't get people. I don't get the internet. I don't get the toxicity of it. I just don't get it. I really don't. And then there was another thing as well. Before Niall had done his post about Liam, his recent post had been flooded with comments about Liam and rest in peace, Liam. Hope you're okay, Niall. A lot of them were really nice. Somebody had put on it, you're the reason that Liam was in Argentina. You're the reason he's dead. I'm not being funny, but Niall's just lost one of his brothers. He's devastated. Might be blaming himself anyway, for all we know. And then somebody put something like that on his recent post. Like, how the hell do you think he's going to respond to that? He might be blaming himself already, and then somebody else is blaming him. Like, he's already devastated as it is and heartbroken, and then you're fucking putting that on one of his. I just don't get people, and I had to come on here and I had to rant a little bit about what I've seen and the stuff that's happened in the wake of Liam's death. Such a tragic death. Something that I'll be honest about since I found out. I haven't actually been able to stop thinking about it. It's been in my head, and it's just very, very sad. And then you got these news outlets and these fucking disgusting people in the comments, just almost taking joy from the fact that Liam's died. And it's like, what, if you were out there, somebody taking joy from Liam dying, go and get your fucking head tested, because you're not right in the head. Anyway, that rant over. I apologise about that, but I just had to bring that up. Anything you want to add there, Professor Wigglytuff?
No, I think you've said basically you've echoed a lot of my thoughts. I just think it's incredibly I don't know what to say about some of these people who would say such horrible and vile things about a person that has just died. People trying to sensationalize, a tragic death, the impact that would have on family, friends, and fans. It's, unfortunately, it's something that has always been around, particularly in the social media age. But nevertheless, it's disgusting, and to anyone watching or listening, I would also say, I'm sure you would never do anything like this, but always, do consider, comments that we make publicly when reacting to such sensitive news. It's a horrible time, and we should always be wary of what we're saying, what we're doing, and how that's going to affect people. And the age-old saying, if you don't have anything nice or positive to say, then don't say anything at all. That's all I have to add on that.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't really have much else to add to that. I just think, just think before you comment. I mean, it's something that I have to do as well, because there's sometimes I see things online that I want to respond to, and I want to respond to quite abruptly, and there's certain things I want to say, and then I never used to sit back and think before I posted. I used to just post, but now I sit back and I think, and sometimes I'm like, no, you know what? It's not even worth putting that. So please do that, especially in these circumstances, and especially in future if something comes out about somebody and we don't know the full details and they haven't been proven guilty, please do not assume guilt. Please do not send them abuse and assume guilt and just believe the word of the other person when we've got no proof, because this sort of thing will happen again. The same thing happened with Caroline Flack. Okay, yeah, I think was she found guilty? I'm not 100% sure, but it was slightly different to what the stuff that came out about Liam. But it's basically the same thing. People hounded Caroline Flack, the media, the people online, and it ended up with her taking her own life. And unfortunately, the same thing has happened to Liam. This ex of his came out and said all this shit about him with no proof. We assumed guilt. He hadn't been proven guilty. And people just hounded him and hounded him and hounded him and posted so many awful memes about him online and said some awful shit. And look what's happened. What happened to when Caroline Flack passed away, the hashtag Be Kind started. What's happened to that? Because that seems to have fallen by the wayside. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. Yeah. Moving on to the next subject for the podcast. Let's talk about something very recent. Samantha Irvin leaving WWE to the shock of the WWE Universe, to the shock of the people backstage. Nobody was expecting this. Yeah, I don't know what's happened. None of us know what's happened. Or what we do know is that apparently she wanted to do outside projects, and WWE would not allow her. Now that sort of it's hard for me to believe that, because that was very much a Vince thing, that he didn't want his superstars doing anything outside of WWE. Triple H has let, obviously, this whole TNA partnership is now going on, which would never have happened with Vince. He's also let AJ Styles and a few other superstars go over to New Japan and wrestle over there. So it's very hard for me to believe that somebody who they really did rate as a ring announcer, they wouldn't let her do this outside project that she would do just for the sake of keeping her. I can't imagine Triple H turning that down. It depends, obviously, what this outside project is. Of course, we don't know. But I find it very hard to believe that he turned that down. He may well have done, but I find it hard to believe, because that very much feels like a Vince sort of thing and not a Triple H sort of thing, judging on what Triple H has allowed his superstars to do since he took over. So yeah, Samantha Irvin leaving WWE, very sad. I rate her as a ring announcer. I think she's one of the best to do it, and she's not even really done it that long, but I already rate her as one of the best to do it. Very unique, announcing. But of course, in the wake of her leaving, we got a legend back. Lillian Garcia returned to our screens full time for the time being. So, yeah, it's sad about Samantha leaving, but a lot of people sort of my age and a little bit older are very happy that Lillian is back, because we grew up with Lillian being the announcer. And another thing as well is, if Lillian does stay on until next year, which is likely, she will be announcing, maybe not all the way through, but she'll be announcing through part of the John Cena retirement tour, which will be interesting, because of course she did most of the announcing for him during his prime, so that would be nice. But yeah, Samantha Irvin leaving WWE, very, very sad, shocking. Didn't expect it. Thought she'd be there for a few more years yet. Doesn't look like she's going to AEW. Her I think it's just boyfriend. I don't know if they're engaged. Ricochet has said that she's not coming to AEW. It looks very much like she's got a project that she wants to focus on. This project that WWE would not allow her to do while she was still working for them, apparently. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens with Samantha Irvin. Will she pop up in AEW? I'm sure we'll find out at some point in the future. Um, but yeah, what are your thoughts, Professor Wigglytuff?
So yeah, I mean, Samantha Irvin's departure was, I have to admit, a very sudden and unexpected occurrence. Whether or not we are to believe what others have said about the nature of her departure, ultimately, look, it's a loss for WWE, but I wouldn't say this would be forever. There is every possibility she may return to WWE in the very near future. Indeed, Lillian Garcia back again, after a very long absence. Yes, she's made a few appearances here and there, in the audience, but certainly a figure that was very prominent during the Ruthless Aggression era, parts of the Attitude era. As you rightly pointed out, somebody who you and myself grew up watching, and it's good to have her back. For how long we don't know, but it's good to have her back. And yes, it would be a nice touch if she was around to announce and introduce, John Cena in what is going to be his retirement run next year. But as for whether or not she's going to resurface elsewhere, as you said, her partner Ricochet has come out and said that she's not coming over to AEW. Um, I think that would probably be accurate to believe. So don't expect to see her in AEW anytime soon. Although, you never know what's going to happen down the line. But, look, she'll be very much missed. And I'm pretty sure we have not seen the last of her in a wrestling capacity, and we will definitely see her again, or hear from her again, I should say.
Yeah, I have to agree. I have to agree. Um, so yeah, that's all I really have to say about Samantha Irvin. I felt it was very much needed to talk. Very much needed to talk about it, seeing as it's very very recent news, of course. I only found out hours before Raw yesterday, or technically still today for us here in the UK, because it's obviously on in the early hours of the morning. Well, obviously technically it's Monday Night Raw, so I will say yesterday. Um, well, yeah, only hours before Raw yesterday did I find did you know we both found out that Samantha Irvin was leaving. I did not realize it was with immediate effect, and not even an hour later there was another story that Lillian Garcia was back full time for the time being. I was very sad about Samantha Irvin leaving. I was like, oh, who are they going to get to replace her? Because, to be honest, the other announcers that they've got for NXT and for SmackDown, not a big fan of. I don't think they're great. So I was like, please don't have one of them doing two shows, because that'll just be painful. And then all of a sudden, this news came out that Lillian Garcia was back. I was like, well, if Samantha's going, there's nobody better to replace her than Lillian Garcia, because Lillian Garcia is the only one in my eyes that is better than Samantha Irvin. So yeah, it's good to see Lillian back, and long may she stay. Anyway, moving on. The next thing I feel like we need to talk about, and this is also sort of a recent thing in a way, um, Donald Trump and his support from certain WWE superstars, um, and just our thoughts on Donald Trump just altogether, really. I mean, we might as well talk about it, seeing as the election is going to be happening very soon. Um, but yeah, look, there's a lot I could say about Donald Trump. I know. I'll talk about it in stages. We'll go a bit back and forth. Me and Professor Wiggly Tough on this, and we'll talk about it in stages. Otherwise, we're both just going to be talking for ages, because we both could talk about Donald Trump for a while. Um, but yeah, obviously we know that Donald Trump and Hulk Hogan our friends. Donald Trump is Hulk Hogan's hero. You know, what sort of person has Donald Trump as their hero? I mean, not a normal person anyway. Um, but we know that Hulk Hogan's not normal. Um, just for a start, every other word is brother. So it's you know,
even if you're not his brother.
exactly. And the irony is he calls people brothers, but he doesn't like brothers. Anyway, some irony there for you. But anyway, yeah. So we know Hulk Hogan. We know Hulk Hogan is a Trump supporter, and he's come out and supported Trump, and he said, you know, when I saw someone take a shot at my hero, I couldn't. I had to say something. I couldn't stay silent any longer. I'm not going to go into that because that was just embarrassing.
I mean, I can imagine Hulk Hogan has problems, being loud. He's not the type to let his ego get carried away, is he?
No, of course not.
He's
He,
always he's always a very quiet, reserved, peaceful guy.
he is. He's never had a creative control card in his life.
No.
Um, he wouldn't do that. But anyway, so yeah, so we know all of that. That isn't news. That was what, over a month ago now. But of course, I don't know if any of you have seen it, and I'm not going to show the video here because I don't want Donald Trump on my stream. It's quite simple. Or should I say our stream? But yeah, I don't want him anywhere near this podcast. So go and search the video for yourself. But of course, recently, and I saw it on TikTok 2 days ago, I think, and I sent it to my co-host, and we had a brief chat about it. And again, we had a little bit of a brief chat about it today, and that's why we decided to do our second episode of our podcast today, because we felt like we had enough to talk about. And that's how these podcasts are going to go. When we feel like we've got enough to sort of talk about, we'll do one. We know we're not going to do one on the fly when we've not got a lot to talk about, because otherwise it just won't go very well. So, anyway, back to what I was saying. So yeah, so I sent this I was just going scrolling on TikTok as you do, and I came across this. I didn't see the video at first. I just saw the poster and it said Donald Trump. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. And then I looked up and I was like, what we gonna see here? And I see Glenn Jacobs, aka Kane, and Mark Holloway, aka Undertaker, sitting either side of Donald Trump. And Undertaker, it was such a cringy video, saying, he said, if you wanna side with Batista and Kamala Harris, or do you want to side with the Brothers of Destruction and Donald Trump? And it's like, this is just so cringy. And I was like, I was just like, I was just so disappointed because I'm such a big Undertaker fan. I'm a big Kane fan. And I just thought, what are you doing? What are you doing? How can you support a man like Donald Trump? Like, it's not normal. But anyway, yeah, so I saw this TikTok and I was just so confused and annoyed. And then I sent it to my co-host, and he enlightened me that Kane and Undertaker are very well-known Republicans. I think I'm right there. And he also enlightened me to a few other superstars that are Republicans as well. Yeah, so very disappointed, to say the least. And I don't think it's going too far to say that I've lost some respect for the Undertaker and Kane. Something I never thought I would ever say, but I feel like I have. But yeah, I feel like before I go any further into what I want to say about Donald Trump and this situation, I think I'll pass you over to my co-host so he can say what he has to say to start with.
Sure, thank you, Tom. And look, I think it's really important for us to provide some context here. Now, obviously, we are a very diverse stream and we have viewers and listeners from all over. We don't have, we don't want to make this stream political and we don't care about people's political affiliations within reason. Obviously, if you support extreme radical politics, then yeah, that might be an issue. I think our issue with Donald Trump isn't so much that he is a Republican or a conservative or whatnot. Now, for the record, as my co-host knows, I am very active politically, and I am very much. I put it this way: I do not identify as right wing. I do not identify as a conservative or a Republican. I think the issue we have is that Donald Trump is not what you would call a typical conservative or a typical Republican in any in any definition of the term. And I am not alone in saying that. This is also a view that is shared by many who would identify themselves as Republican and conservative around the world. Concerns about Donald Trump are raised all over the world. And the issue, I think, and I think my co host agrees with me on this, is that Donald Trump's approach to politics in the way that he uses misinformation and disinformation to stir up fear and division and hatred, literally scaring people to vote for him, coming up with crazy theories and crazy stories. You know, one, one of um, one of my guilty pleasures is to watch his rallies or his speeches simply to be amused by the absurdity of what he says. Uh, and I think what's even more shocking is the fact that people actually believe him when he says these things. You know, to give an example of some of the crazy stuff that he is saying and doing, suggesting that foreign governments are emptying their, in his words, insane asylums and sending those patients over to America to cross the border illegally, claiming that certain groups of illegal migrants hide in trees to mug old ladies in the middle of the night, suggesting that now, and I kid you not, that cows, yes, cows as in farmyard animals, are crossing the border and bringing with them disease, suggesting that there are groups of illegal immigrants who are kidnapping pet cats and dogs and eating them. This is basically the language and the rhetoric coming from a man who not only is vying to be president of the United States, but lest we forget, is a former president of the United States, a former head of state, a world leader, a man that is supposed to command respect, and embody the best values of his country. Now, before before I deep dive into my thoughts on Mark Calloway and Glenn Jacobs, it's worth pointing out that for those who don't know, Glenn Jacobs, aka Kane, is the current Republican mayor of Knoxville County, Tennessee. He has been very well known for his Republican views, and certainly within the last couple of years was very much challenged publicly about his uh, views um, on abortion, which let's just say didn't go down too well. The Undertaker has also had his fair share of encounters on Twitter and exchanges with fans about his support of abortion and his anti-abortion views, as well as his support of Donald Trump and the Republican Party. So it's not news that he holds those views. Now, Obviously, there are other superstars, or individuals associated with wrestling who have been very public about their political views. I'm not going to list them all because obviously, without concrete evidence or anything like that, obviously it would not be fair of us to do that. And this is not like we are trying to out people for their politics. People are entitled to their political views. We respect that. But for the record, obviously, we know about Glenn Jacobs. We now know about Mark Calloway. We've known that Vince McMahon and obviously the McMahon family. Linda McMahon, of course, served in Donald Trump's cabinet. And of course, how can we forget the horror of, Hulk Hogan's speech at the Republican National Convention? Now, I think the problem we have here, the issue that we have here is, and again, people are entitled to interpret politics however they wish to view it. But I think it's safe to say that a lot of people, both in America and worldwide, do have little respect for Donald Trump in the way he conducts himself, and the way he panders to the extremes of American society. And I think for someone like Mark Calloway, The Undertaker, to come out and say, basically in similar words to Hulk Hogan, about how he hero worships Donald Trump, even going as far as saying that he's made politics fun again, is just absolutely baffling. I mean, what could possibly be fun about dividing society, dividing communities, stereotyping and generalizing people simply for political gain? Lest we forget, when he was president, there was an attack on peaceful protesters by a member of the KKK or a neo-Nazi who Trump didn't condemn. You know, lest we forget, this climate of violence that he's created. After he lost the 2020 election, and his supporters charged on the U.S. Capitol building, where people actually died, because they were not happy with the result of the election. And he basically, he was found to have instigated that. Let's not forget, this is a man who has been found guilty of fraud and other allegations. So if this is the person that The Undertaker and Hulk Hogan want to hero worship and call inspiring and say that they've made politics fun, then really I have to agree with you, Tom. I have lost a lot of respect for The Undertaker as a human being. Now, let me just clarify one thing. Obviously, look, in the US, yes, there are many different parties, just as there are in the UK. But I think it's safe to say that generally there are two parties that dominate US politics. You know, the Democrats and the Republicans, and to an extent in the UK, either you're Labour or you're Conservative. Obviously, the Lib Dems will challenge that, but it's safe to say that if you vote in the US or the UK, you're 50-50 as to whether or not someone is Republican or someone is sorry, in the UK, whether someone is Labour or someone is Conservative, or in the US, whether you're Democrat or Republican. Would I have had an issue with him voting Republican or voting for Donald Trump as president? No, because ultimately, at the end of the day, there are people in America who are Republican, who may not be fans of Donald Trump, but because of their affiliation to the Republican Party, will vote Republican because they've always done it. Indeed, that has always been the case with me in my politics in the UK. It doesn't necessarily mean I endorse the leader of the party or the person who is running to become prime minister, but you do it because it's the family business, to use a term, as it were. That I wouldn't have an issue with. He's a Republican, fine. It's the and to be very clear, and I think you kind of agree with me on this point, and this is where we're both coming from, Tom. It's the fact that he's using language such as to hero worship Donald Trump, that is what we have an issue with. That is the problem. you know, here, celebrating this man as some sort of warrior or some sort of godlike figure when he really isn't. When he really isn't. And um, yeah, that is the issue that I have. And I'm not going to say just because he has differing politics to mine, I don't respect him anymore. But I don't respect him for parading around Donald Trump as a hero when he really isn't, and he's got criminal convictions to prove that.
Hmm.
And if that is your hero, then you know what does it say about Mr. Calloway? And this is not me saying that we should cancel the Undertaker or anything, not at all. As I said, he, like Hulk Hogan, are both entitled to their political views. Of course they are. But, we just, maybe it was foolish of us or naive of us to think that we expected a bit more of somebody like Mark Calloway or Terry Bollea,
Hmm.
Mr. Hulk Hogan, as it were. I mean, Hulk Hogan, obviously, we don't. But maybe we did expect something a little bit more of The Undertaker in the way that he conducts himself.
Hmm.
But maybe we have to remember, and we mustn't forget, that these people are also normal human beings outside of the ring, outside of their character, outside of their persona. And maybe, yeah, it's just the way it is. But, yeah, uh, I'll hand it over to you, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, you made a fair few good points in there, and the one thing I wanna, well, there's a couple of things I wanna touch on what you said, but one of the things is, yeah, the Undertaker saying that Donald Trump had made politics fun again. I mean, one, in my eyes, in my eyes, is there's a buzzing sound coming from your mic, by the way. Hello?
Oh, sorry. Let me just give me 1 second, please.
Okay. Yeah,
You continue.
yeah. 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 So first of all, on the sake of saying that, I mean, am I wrong in saying that politics is not supposed to be fun? Politics is there to help people in everyday life and make whatever country they're in charge of better, basically. So whether you're the Prime Minister of the UK, President of the USA, President of France, or whatever, or Prime Minister, whatever it is in France, I don't know, or whatever country you're the leader of, you're put in charge because people think you're the best person for the job to make their country better, to look after their country. It's not supposed to be fun. If you can have fun along the way, great. But it's not supposed to be fun. So for Undertaker to say, Mark Calloway to say, that he's made politics fun again, why does it need to be fun? Why does it need to be fun? It's not supposed to be fun. Like I said, if you can have fun along the way, great. But it's not initially supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a serious thing where you know, you do serious debates and all this sort of stuff to try and get people on your side to vote for you. And then if you do get in office and you're in charge, you're supposed to look after the country because people have voted for you because you're the best person for the job. If, like I said, have fun along the way, great. But it's not what you should be looking to do. If you're like, oh, I'm going to try and become the president, but I'm just going to have fun with it. I'm just going to have fun all the time. No, it's not going to work. Yeah, have fun along the way, but that shouldn't be your main objective to have fun all the time because it won't work. You've got to be serious some of the time because people have got to know that you've got that serious side, that you can seriously look after the country that they are living in. So, I mean, and then the other side of it, isn't it? Like saying he makes politics fun again. Um, the other side of it, like what? So, so he, all the stuff he said about, these foreigners eating cats and dogs and all the stupid shit he said. That's fun, is it? Basically, being openly racist is fun, is it? Is there something you're not telling us, Mark Galloway? Are you a massive racist and we don't know about it? Because if you're endorsing such behaviour on, if you're endorsing such behaviour and saying that it's fun, you basically are saying that you're a racist. Now, I'm not going to say that he is because it wouldn't be fair for me to say that because I don't know. But
And on top of that, we don't want to get sued as
of
well. So.
course, of course, but to basically endorse racist behaviour on behalf of Donald Trump and say
And
it's
sexist behaviour.
and sexist behaviour, like
How is that even fun?
exactly, how is that even fun? And the thing that disturbs me the most about this is that the Undertaker is Mark Calloway is endorsing a man that has openly sexually assaulted, not openly, but he has sexually assaulted women, grabbed them by the the pussy basically, and he even said that that's what he does. And he's done that. He's been very very sexist as well. And yet the Undertaker, I think he has one son, and the rest are daughters. I think they're young at the moment. I think relatively young. Does he really want his daughters to grow up, knowing their dad is endorsing a racist and a sexist? Like, I get that, like what you said before about the fact that obviously it's your political party and you're going to support that political party no matter who the leader is. Like, I'm the same. Like, I've always supported the same party, no matter who the leader is. You know what I mean? Because I couldn't stand the other party. Never have been able to stand them. And I'm not going to tell you which party that is because it's not fair for me to reveal my political side. Because that's not what this is about. But, yeah, I mean, I get that. I get that you're going to want to support the party that you've always supported, and I get that you're not always going to like the leader of that party. But that's not even what we have an issue with. We don't even have an issue with the fact that the Undertaker and Kane are Republican. That's fine. If you want to be Republican, you want to be Republican. That's your choice. That's your freedom of choice. The issue that we have is the fact that the Undertaker is openly endorsing the behaviour of Donald Trump and calling it fun. You know what I mean? Calling it fun, doing videos with Donald Trump, endorsing him like a hero. That's the issue that we have. And we thought, when Hulk Hogan did it, we weren't that shocked because Hulk Hogan's fucked in the head. But then you get somebody like Undertaker who people who are big wrestling fans and know of Mark Calloway, and all the things that have been said about this man, we thought was very level-headed, knew what was right from wrong. If he's a Republican, he would, vote for Trump, but don't openly endorse him and say that he's brought fun back to politics when he's been saying openly racist and sexist stuff. Like, it's just baffling to me.
It's disappointing because I mean,
Hi, Genetic.
look, the Undertaker isn't somebody I consider a hero, but he is an iconic wrestling superstar. And I had the pleasure of meeting the Undertaker in 2019. As I was saying to Tom earlier, offline, he was perfectly friendly, perfectly polite, a great guy. You know, and it was a great time meeting him. He signed my merch, which was 2 limited edition Undertaker urns. Now the thing is, it's like, yeah, I don't expect everyone to have the same political views as me, and it would be a strange world to live in if we did. But yeah, you're right in saying he's someone that we anticipate would have been a bit level-headed, and that even in circumstances like this, he would have been a bit, look, yeah, I'm Republican. Yeah, I'm going to vote for Trump. But you know what? I'm not going to come out and endorse him in this way. I don't want people to get the wrong impression, and I don't want them to think that I'm endorsing or condoning some of the way he conducts himself. By doing what he has done, the Undertaker has basically said, okay, and this is again, we have to be careful here what we're saying. I don't want us to get sued or anything like that. But he has effectively said that he has no issues with the way Donald Trump spreads disinformation. That he has no problem with the fact that Donald Trump was convicted of fraud, amongst other things. That he has no problem with the fact that Donald Trump has basically said things very close to the cusp, which could be interpreted as racist. Where he is in his speeches, and you just got to go online and just watch any of his speeches from the last week alone, where he makes outrageous lies and claims about illegal immigrants, whether it's framing certain groups stealing pets to eat them, or hiding in trees to mug old ladies, or governments emptying insane asylums and sending over their patients over to, as he puts it, invade America. You know, this is what it, this it. I'm sorry to say this. This is the sort of man Mark Calloway, aka the Undertaker, is. I'm sorry to say,
Mm.
and I'm torn as to whether or not I can actually admire the guy anymore. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to chuck away all my merch. For the record, I am doing that with Hulk Hogan's merch because, you know, yeah, I'm going to say it here, and if he wants to sue me, he can. Hulk Hogan is a racist. He even admitted so in a recording. You know, black wrestlers have come out and said that Hulk Hogan's apology hasn't been sincere. Hulk Hogan hasn't done anything to convince us that he isn't what he is, and then what he's accused of, and then he gives that outrageous, ridiculous speech at the Republican National Convention, and then a recording at a private event weeks later, where he makes deeply offensive comments about how he wants to assault the Vice President of the United States and makes racist comments about her heritage. Yeah, I'm sorry to say it, he is a racist. Hulk Hogan is a racist. He is no hero of mine, and I will not shed a tear when the guy eventually pops his clogs. He is a disgrace, and I thank God that there are other wrestlers out there we can refer to as
Mm.
legends who will, you know, not necessarily erase Hulk Hogan from the history books. Unfortunately, he is there in the history books. That won't have that. That name's not going to go away. But who will eventually outdo anything he ever did in the industry, and he will just fade. As I said, fade into history. Where he deserves, and that's the that's the most that's what he deserves, just to fade away into
Mm.
history. He is a disgrace. He is a disgrace, and I'm sorry to say, I'm now beginning to think the same of Mark Calloway, the Undertaker. It is sad
Mm.
to see, someone like Mark Calloway, who I have had a lot of respect for as an individual outside of the ring, for, as you said, for his level-headedness and professionalism, to conduct himself in this manner, by doing a ridiculous TikTok video where he's criticizing Harris, Tim Waltz, and Dave Batista, because of obviously Dave Batista's criticism of Donald Trump. Um, so yeah, it seems as though Mark Calloway has now, yeah, let's refer to him by his real name because he's talking as Mark Calloway. It seems as though Mark Calloway has now lowered himself to that mentality of this, mob-like thuggery behavior,
Mm.
of trading personal insults and yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. That I mean, for those of you who are in the chat, I know, and good evening to you, Genetic ACGT. I know you're very clued up on the state of US politics, being American yourself. Maybe you might want to comment on that.
Yeah.
But we can carry on talking about this for a moment, to allow others to kind of contribute in the chat.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is the problem. It's like how do I describe it? It's that feeling when you find out that Santa Claus doesn't like children, when
Mm.
you realize that the people that were your heroes just aren't particularly nice people or the people that you thought they
Yeah.
were. And I'm not saying that the Undertaker was my hero, he wasn't, but it's like, you know, I mean, something else that I said to you, whilst we were offline, and we both agreed on, someone like The Rock or John Cena or Stone Cold Steve Austin or Sting or Bill Goldberg, or Rey Mysterio or Edge, you know, Daniel Bryan, all of whom I know are not affiliated in that way. But if they came out and did stuff like this, I would disown them.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the record, I know that people like Kevin Nash and Mick Foley are, very passionate Democrats. Certainly, two individuals who have publicly condemned Donald Trump and continue to do so. I think it's safe to say Brian Danielson as well. You know, I couldn't anticipate. I could never imagine Brian Danielson as anything but not a Trump supporter.
Mm.
But as I said, if John Cena started parading views like that, he'd be dropped like a hot potato,
Mm.
as would The Rock. And I hope that they've got more sense than at least Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker than to ever engage in that way.
Yeah.
But why don't you have a read of what's in the chat?
Yeah. So Genetic, good evening, by the way. Hope you're doing okay. Thank you for joining us. He says, I'm just confused that people forgot how much Trump mishandled the pandemic. To me, that's a trump card against him, pun intended.
I mean, yeah, there is that. There is that, especially some of the bizarre, just to remind you all, some of the bizarre comments Trump made about the pandemic. He wasn't an anti-vaxxer, but he would spread weird things about the pandemic, such as injecting yourself. Was it injecting or drinking bleach would somehow cure you of
yes.
COVID
Yes.
19?
Yeah.
And absolutely, I must stress to anyone watching or listening: do not ever, ever attempt something like that. Absolutely not. But yeah, this is a man who, yeah, I mean, we don't need to list off his misdemeanors. The guy, it just baffles the mind. It baffles the mind that Mark Calloway would endorse Trump in this way. Oh yeah, let's not forget. Sorry, the other guy who hosted him on a podcast recently, Tyrus, aka Brodus Clay. That decorated superstar wrestler that we all love and miss very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, pun intended. We don't miss him. He was a crap wrestler.
Somebody should have called
Um,
his mama.
yeah, somebody should have called his mum on the Trump bandwagon. So, and look, I don't know what it is with some of these wrestlers who think maybe it's time to be a bit more extreme so that they can be relevant again. And it's not the first time. There are other wrestlers who have taken to being conspiracy theorists and all sorts. Again, I'm not going to name names for fear of either misquoting people or being sued. But they're out there, and it baffles me. I just wonder if these people genuinely, what is it that they are so desperate for? What is it that they are so desperate for? What is it they want? And for anyone that's feeling brave, I believe Donald Trump is about to give a speech right now, which you can follow on
we
online.
yeah
Somehow, I'm not going to
we
recommend links, but
no, we won't be doing a watch along of that.
no, but just in case you want to see
Yeah.
how ludicrous and absurd some of the stuff that he's
Mm.
saying, it's like I said, I think for me the disappointing thing is that yes, I always knew Mark Calloway's politics wasn't really my cup of tea. I didn't think he would have gone as far as where he has gone now, and yeah, I think now the Undertaker has gone down in my estimation. Now, I'm not, I think regularly, as my colleague will attest, we debate a lot about who we consider the top 10 greatest wrestlers, and we tend to put, the Undertaker at number 4 behind, John Cena, The Rock, and Steve Austin. Um, in fact, we tend to put The Rock and John Cena at joint number 1. I'm not suggesting for one moment we would push The Undertaker down the list as of what's happened. Of course not. I think that would be silly. Um, there might be a couple of people I might put ahead of him. In fact, I think, and this is a different debate for another time, but I would even argue maybe history will be kinder to Roman Reigns, and that maybe he should be placed higher up in the list. We'll see,
Mm.
but yeah, I just think, um, and obviously genetic ACGT, please make continue to make some points in the chat that we can. If you want us to, so we can prolong the. If you want us to prolong the discussion on Trump, but yeah, it's disappointing when you find out people that you admire, hold views that you would consider unsettling. And yeah, to suggest that he's made politics fun, not that politics is meant to be fun, but that he's made it fun by virtue of his antics and his behavior, it's, I'm afraid, it says a lot about Mr. Calloway and what he, and his values.
Yeah.
But I'll hand it back to you, Tom.
Yeah. Genetics says injecting with cleaner to be specific. Okay, well, we knew it was something like that. But thank you for clearing that up. He also said, I think some wrestlers support Trump because they're rich and hoping for a tax break.
I mean, that is also a
That's
possibility.
yeah, that's not beyond the realms of possibility. Um, but yeah, I
But
mean,
I
oh,
would argue that they're rich enough they could afford
the tax,
tax
yeah.
issues. So the Undertaker isn't. Mark Calloway's not exactly short of money,
No.
or I hope he's not after all those years.
Mm,
And look, when I say that I've lost respect for him as a person, it doesn't mean that I'm seeking to erase him from wrestling history. I think he's not quite achieved the Hulk Hogan level of, infamy just yet. But I won't be rushing out to buy any more, you know, Undertaker merchandise. I think anytime soon. Let's put it that way. I think, you know, look, he's had his career. He won't be forgotten, of course not. But other people will come along. Other people will have lengthy runs. Other people will do great things, and eventually, people like Hulk Hogan, people like The Undertaker, and even one day, people like The Rock and John Cena. They won't be forgotten. But other wrestlers will come along. They'll get big. They'll
mm,
take over the spotlight, and we'll be talking about these people in the past tense. But I think dare I say, if there's a dustbin of wrestling, I've already put Hulk Hogan. I've already put the Ultimate Warrior in that dustbin. You know, I haven't quite put the Undertaker in the dustbin. I haven't quite put Kane in the dustbin. Let's just say I've put them in a trash bag and I've put them beside the dustbin.
yeah. Um,
Um,
yeah. I mean, I don't. It's difficult really to know what else to say about it. I feel like I've said a lot about it. I feel like I've said pretty much everything I want to say, but I just keep coming back to that comment about making politics fun again, and I just think to myself, right, before he made that comment, he thought through about making that comment and still went ahead and made that comment. I mean, this is a man who had a very lengthy career in WWE, somebody who is well known for being very smart. You know what I mean? and then goes ahead and says one of the dumbest comments I think I've ever seen. It's like, in what world do you think that that was a right comment to make? In what world do you think that making that comment saying about politics being fun again was the right comment to make, judging on what Donald Trump has done and his antics during his time at trying to get the presidency back? Like, in what world was that the right comment to make? Be a Trump supporter all you want. Doesn't mean you have to, go out there and say all these sort of things and parade him around like some sort of hero. Leave that to Hulk Hogan. You know what I mean? Leave that to Hulk Hogan. We hate Hulk Hogan anyway, so it doesn't matter what he does. Just let him. Just leave that to him. We don't need to be losing respect for more wrestlers that we grew up watching, wrestlers who, you know, at least for me, are some of my favourites. It's just so sad because I feel like the older I get, more and more is coming out about the people that I grew up idolising, people I grew up really, really, liking, and more is coming out about them. And I feel like I'm not going to have any childhood heroes left. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, here is a point I will make. I did make the point earlier that we have to remember that they are ordinary people. And they have ordinary lives, and they have their values, they have their politics and whatever. But at the same time, and it's a term that is bandied about a lot about athletes and about famous people, and especially in the context of inspiring younger people. They are viewed as role models.
Yeah.
It's something that's often leveled at athletes and footballers when they do something wrong. They are role models. And I think it's safe to say that a lot of people, including myself, did see someone like Hulk Hogan as a role model. Especially when he'd say all the crap about, and just for context, excuse my use of words there. There's obviously nothing crap about saying your prayers if you're religious, but of course, the stuff that he said about, say your prayers, take your vitamins, all that sort of stuff. Being on the right side of good and everything like that. And the Undertaker, even with his, you know, character, he was always portrayed as a bit, except for his like Ministry of Darkness bit, he was often portrayed as a bit of an anti-hero, a good guy here and there. You know, it's they are role models. They are role models. John Cena. John Cena. Case in point. The Rock. Yeah, The Rock obviously made a career about being a bit badass or whatever, and Steve Austin, but they were seen as role models. They were seen as good guys. The people's champ. Steve Austin as the working class hero, as it were. People like Mick Foley, with the whole "Have a nice day" shtick. Bret Hart, with the whole, being the, striving for excellence. Rey Mysterio being the underdog. The late great Eddie Guerrero again. Other than the lying, cheating, and the stealing, being the great underdog. These people are meant to be role models. And dare I say, without wishing to cause controversy, it's someone we have spoken about before, and the controversy surrounding fans who can't accept what he did wrong. But you could even say that about Chris Benoit, and why a lot of these so-called fans refused to accept that he did anything wrong was because they celebrated the guy so much, not just for his technical prowess, but the fact that he was an unconventional wrestler that broke the mold, that worked his way up as an underdog and reached the top of the mountain. And they just find it so hard to believe that a man who, in their eyes, achieved so much as an underdog, who broke so much ground, as a wrestler, could be such a vile human being. And I think that this is the problem you have, as you said, as we get older. And it's not just in wrestling. You see it in, acting. You see it in the music industry. Obviously, I'm not going to make reference to, other celebrities who may be facing trial or whatnot. Obviously, if you follow the news, you'll see who they are. But unfortunately, this is the sad reality that these people are just normal people, and sometimes, even though they are meant to be role models, it's not necessarily something that they signed up to or wanted to be. And we just have to accept that, with the case of people like Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior, and the Undertaker, that they simply weren't those sorts of people.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
And of course, apologies if by mentioning Chris Benoit that triggered anybody, but I felt it was an important analogy to kind of bring in there.
yeah,
And I think Tom
yeah,
you'll agree with me on that that was
absolutely.
actually a valid point to
Yeah,
make. You know, I do think that does also explain a lot about why you get these conspiracy theorists
mm,
surrounding Chris Benoit and the circumstances of his death. It's simply a case of they just can't accept that somebody who they felt did so much good in the ring
yeah,
and really shook up the industry, with his unconventional approach, could have been a bad guy.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, I we pride ourselves on this podcast of not really hiding away from anything, and we'll talk about anything and everything within reason, of course. And you know, the you know the likes of Chris Benoit are not off limits. We've talked about him a few times, and um, you know,
I think it's important to establish that we're not when we're talking about it, we are not doing it to celebrate
no, of
him or
course
to
not.
celebrate, the consequence. We're doing it with sensitivity. It's
Yeah,
simply to provide. I don't want to say a context because there is no justification to what he did. It's more to kind of just, you know, how do we explain why it's not appropriate to celebrate him anymore?
yeah,
And I think we've done that. I think we've done that quite validly. I think we've acknowledged that there are people out there who are refusing to accept the circumstances. I
mm,
think we've deciphered why that might be the case. But nevertheless, just because they may have done all those great things, they did something that was really quite unforgivable. Now, I'm not going to suggest for one moment that Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker having their political views or endorsing Donald Trump is on the same level as, whatever Chris Benoit did. But I think it adds to the point that I said before that I think also the reason we are upset about it is because of that,
yeah,
because these are people that we did look up to and idolize. And yet, as we've gotten older, we've realised that these people are actually a bunch of twats.
yeah, and
It,
that's exactly it. And with the likes of Chris Benoit, we won't mention them unnecessarily. It's not something like that's what we're gonna do. But if mentioning him helps make a point, then of course, yes, we will mention him. So maybe I should put a trigger warning at the start of our podcast or something like that to let you know that we might talk about in talk about these sort of things,
sensitive.
but yeah, sensitive subjects. But you know,
Well, to be fair, I think I'd say, given our use of language as well, we would say this isn't really a stream for kids. So,
no, definitely not.
um, you know, I would say 18 plus,
Yeah,
or if you are younger, then watch it with your parents or someone who's older than 18. But
yeah,
and you know, be wary of the language being used. Don't use it, anywhere else
yeah.
outside. Don't use it to people or anything where we're not using it at each other or anything
No.
like that. But yeah, no, I think we've
Um.
hit the nail on the head there. We have said basically it's a case of, you know, realizing that these people who once upon a time might have been great in the ring, once upon a time might have been these fantastic superstars who broke boundaries. Some might have been larger than life, others might have been the underdog, but just turned out to be evil, nasty people, or in the
Mm,
case of Hulk Hogan, just a massive wanker.
yeah. And that's it. I mean, yeah. It's just it is.
that that that's the most scientific term I can use to describe Hulk
I
Hogan.
mean, I could think of a worse word to call him, but we'll move on. Um,
We will.
Genetic says there are some. This is going back to what he said before about. Oh, hang on. What he said before about supporting Trump because they're rich and hope for a tax break. He says there are some there are some more nuanced reasons that maybe some of his not rich base supports him, but it would take some time to explain. He
Yeah, I mean, we will come back to obviously the subject of the U.S. election. I'm sure
Yes, we will
over
do.
the next few weeks.
He says, unfortunately, there are no heroes in the world. Like Wigglytuff said, they're human beings, flaws and all. Yeah, and that's exactly it. And that's, as hard as it is to sort of realize sometimes these people are just normal human beings. Behind the character, behind if the mask and all that sort of stuff. If they wear a mask, obviously,
But
they they are
I
just
actually,
they are just
yeah, no,
normal
carry on, Tom.
they are just normal human beings, and of course they're going to have flaws, just like we do. No one's perfect,
No,
and it's as
nobody's
simple as that.
perfect, but I actually disagree that I do think there can be heroes in this world, and without being cheesy and quoting Batman, heroes don't necessarily have to wear capes. There are so many people in this world who have done great and inspiring things. Now, we don't know everything about their personal lives or private lives, and many of them were flawed. I mean, for example, many of my heroes, to name a few, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Mahatma Gandhi, you know, people who generally are viewed as great historical figures who did a lot to change the world and society, but had their flaws. Uh, Somebody whom I know is celebrated very much in the UK and worldwide, but I'm personally not a fan of Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill, for his leadership in the Second World War, defending Britain and Britain's allies. But for those of you that may not know, Churchill unfortunately held some very unpleasant views about race and particularly about Indian people. Now, for those of you that don't know, I am of British Indian origin. So naturally, somebody who would have, you know, unpleasant views or deeply offensive and derogatory views about people of Indian origin aren't exactly going to be top of my list of heroes or idols. Now, that is something that I am, I've been steadfast with. And look, I don't have a problem with the society wanting to celebrate him how they want, having statues of him or having him on a banknote or whatever. He's not my hero. But it's absolutely fine if people choose to celebrate him in that way.
Mm.
And there are plenty of people that I've also encountered who do. Heroes can even be people in our everyday communities. Whether it's you know, a local healthcare worker, whether it's volunteers in our community, whether it's people, who go the extra mile. This is not me trying to, be all lovey dovey, paint a rainbow, whatever. But, there are heroes in every walk of life. We're all human beings. But ultimately, the one thing that I always say, that is actually what makes these people great. The fact that they are human beings, that they're just somebody else, just like me or you. And if they can do good in the world, that means we can also do good in the world. And, it's something that somebody reminded me when I was at university. When I struggled with my disabilities, but I did well, and I graduated with a, sorry to blow my own trumpet here, graduated with a first class degree from Cambridge. But when I was really struggling, and I'd really be open about it on social media, one of my friends would say to me, look, what you're doing, it's not any difficult than what people have done before, who came before you and who'll come after you. Human beings created the degree that you're studying. Human beings have engaged in it and they've done well from it. So you're another human being just like them. And that's what we should always remember. There's good and bad in the world, and sometimes bad things can be overlooked. It depends how bad they are. But whenever there is something bad going on in the world, look, we should always do our bit to try and do good in the world. And whether that's in the political sense, whether that's in the professional sense, or whether uh, you know volunteering. So
Mm.
yeah, I hope as a final point on that, I can you can all take that away and be inspired to do good in the world, as it were.
Yeah, and I feel like we have we have said this, but just to put it out there that we have no issue with anybody, you know, supporting whatever party they want to support, whether it be in the UK, whether it be in the US. We don't we know we're not we don't discriminate. We're not, you can have whatever political views you want. You can support who you want. The issue that we're taking is the fact that, you know, Hulk Hogan, who we expected to be the way he has been because he's a twat, um, but so we expect that from Hulk Hogan. But then you've got people like Kane and the Undertaker coming out and endorsing. I nearly said Punk. It's not CM Punk. Trump, like he's some sort of hero, and then Mark Calloway saying that he's made politics fun again. Basically, saying that all these antics and all the shit that Trump has said during his rallies is fun. That's what we take exception to, not their political views. Like my co-host said, he's known for a while the Undertaker's political, affiliation. You know what I mean? So it's not about that. It's not about the political affiliation. It's not about what party they support. Because, like we've said before, you're gonna, realistically, you're gonna support the party you support, and you're not gonna change unless something drastic happens. So
And
you,
of course,
so you,
just to add,
so you,
just to
so
yeah,
you,
sorry, carry on.
so you may support a certain party, um, you know, through its highs and lows, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to like every leader. It's a case of coming out and endorsing said leader when they've done the shit that Donald Trump has, but openly racist, openly sexist, and then endorsing him like he's some sort of hero and saying that he's made politics fun. And I know I keep going back to that comment, but that's just how despicable that comment is, because I just can't get over it.
And
Um,
just to add a point there, obviously, if there are people who do have, pro conservative, pro Republican views, or even pro Trump views who are on the stream or listening, we're more than happy to discuss with you. Nothing is off limits. We are not anti anyone that supports the Republicans or conservatives or Donald Trump. We are merely saying that we are just trying to get our head around the language being used by the likes of Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker. And it's almost as if they are suggesting, all the stuff that we are pinpointing about Donald Trump. This is not subjective opinion. This is not something that we have made up. This is not just something that we have interpreted. This is facts. This is facts that he has either been condemned on by people within even the Republican Party. Not only that, like I said, with regards to the issues with fraud, stuff that he has been found guilty of in a court of law. Lest we forget, he is a convicted felon. Let me reiterate that one more time. He is a convicted criminal. This is not and this is the person who is vying to become president of the United States. Now, if you think someone who is a convicted criminal is your hero, or has made politics fun again, or made it relevant again, or made it inspiring again, or if this person is your hero, your warrior, your gladiator, then yeah, I am sorry to say that there is something wrong with you. If that's what you genuinely think, if you think that someone like that is meant to be an inspiration, somebody like that is meant to be an inspiration and embody the best values of what America has to offer. Again, a man that I don't particularly have a lot of time for as a human being or as a politician, Ronald Reagan, but he did famously describe America as a shining city on the hill that was meant to be a beacon of excellence and an inspiration to the world. Now, I've not always necessarily believed that. I don't view any one country as the greatest country in the world. I think that is a unfair assessment. Other than in a football context, as my good friend Genetic ACGT will know that I always say, the only country in the world that can claim to be the greatest country in the world in a footballing context is Brazil. But I think it's safe to say that people do look at America as you know hope leading the way on many issues together alongside other Western powers, whether it's America, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, France, Germany, other countries in Europe, you know, societies like Japan, and emerging countries, like India, and obviously China and Russia have their issues, but you know, your elected leaders, and I'll make this as our final point because obviously I don't want this to dominate the chat. But political leaders are meant to inspire the very best in individuals. They're meant to embody a country's best values to inspire people to bring about social change. And with all due respect, I don't see how Donald Trump does that. I don't see how a man that chooses to demonize illegal migrants and whatever these people's motives might be for crossing the border, you know, outside the appropriate channels, to use a more appropriate term, demonize them isn't the right way to go. Demonizing them isn't the right way to go. Yes, there are people, and it happens here, it happens around the world, for as long as there have been borders throughout history, people have crossed borders, sometimes legally, sometimes illegally. But for every person that might want to do it dishonestly, there are plenty of people who are doing it because they are faced with very little options. Either they do that and risk getting arrested or losing their lives on the journey, or they stay where they are and they get shot or persecuted, or their families get persecuted. That is the reality. And I think this isn't me turning this into please don't demonize refugees or anything like that. No, but please remember, people wouldn't take these risks to their lives and the family and their lives of their children. You just got to look at news stories where you hear about people drowning in the English Channel. Tom, I'm sure you're aware as well, and those of you in the UK will be aware. It seems every other week we hear an unfortunate story of people have died crossing the Channel, and sometimes with very, very young children. You know, people wouldn't take these risks if the other option for them to stay put was viable. People say things like, "Oh, they pass through all these safe countries. Why don't they?" Well, if that was really the case, then they would have stayed put. But the reality is, those other countries also don't want to support them. Now, this is not going to be a political cast. I'm not going to say, "Oh, we need to do more to help people." That's for another debate for another time. But it goes back to the point, with Hulk Hogan and the Undertaker. You know, Hulk Hogan referring to illegal migrants as scumbags. Who the hell is Hulk? I'm sorry, but who the hell is Hulk Hogan to call anybody a scumbag? And if Mark Calloway thinks by Donald Trump demonizing these people who sometimes are, fleeing wars or whatever because they genuinely want help and safety, if demonizing them and trivializing what they go through has made politics fun again, then I'm sorry, Mr. Calloway. I'm glad that your career's over and that we're no longer going to see you in the ring, and I hope we don't. I'm really sorry to have to say that, but yeah, um, yeah, that's my point. I don't know if there's anyone still in the chat, Genetic ACGT, if you want to say any closing points, but that's all I have to say on the Undertaker and Donald Trump for tonight.
Yeah, I feel like we've talked in length about the Undertaker and Donald Trump, and we've got a few other things that we want to discuss. Um, One quick point I wanted to make, and it's something that was, I think, came out today. And it's just a very quick point. I'm not going to dwell on it. I just wanted to, these podcasts are about recent news and what's happened, and I just wanted to make a quick point and a quick mention of it. Zayn Malik of One Direction has come out and said that he's cancelling his US tour because of obviously the recent news of Liam's passing. Completely understandable. I hope that the people that were going to be going to his tour are really completely understanding. I would like to think you are. But yeah,
I'm sure they will be.
you know, of course, my thoughts are with all the 1D boys. And yeah, absolutely, think it's the right decision for Zayn to cancel his US tour. He shouldn't be going out and doing something like that at the moment when Liam's death is still so raw. He has said that he's rescheduling it for January, and the tickets will still be valid for January, so no one's going to miss out. But yeah, Zayn needs to focus on himself right now and keep away from the limelight for now, and just take care of himself. So yeah, that's what I just wanted to make a quick point there. And please,
No, and I think completely understandable. And look, our thoughts still go out to the family, friends, and fans of Liam Payne and One Direction. At this very, very difficult time.
yeah, of course, and yeah, that was it. I just wanted to make a quick point. Genetics says again, rest in peace, Liam. Yeah, of course. Um, but yeah, so like I said, we've got a few other things we want to talk about, and I think the main event of the I say main event, it makes it sound like it's a wrestling stream. It's not, but basically, I think the main thing that we'll finish on is the news about Chris Hoy and his wife. So before we get to that, this was Fresh Wigglytuff's idea. He wanted to talk about our favourite teams, for football teams or soccer teams, if you're in America, from around the world. Um, I'm going to allow my co-host to start this off, and then I will chime in with some of my favourite teams. Of course, if you've got any favourite teams of yours, anybody in the chat, please get in the chat with your favourite teams as well. Over to you, Fresh Wigglytuff.
Sure, thank you, Tom. Now, let me provide you with some context. Now, obviously, as you probably both know, myself and Tom are big football fans. And, Tom is a big Manchester United fan. I'm a big Manchester City fan, owing to, where we both were either born and raised or grew up. Um, but, I'm a big football fan. I like following football all over the world. Can't claim to be watching every game that's going on every day. But, football is truly a global sport. It is the global game. Now, I know our cousins across the pond, except for the women's game, maybe not quite as big as the NFL, but, after all, they are going to be hosting two big tournaments, the Club World Cup next summer and then the FIFA World Cup in 2026. So it has popularity. It is, we could say, a truly global game. And, you know, the Premier League isn't the only league in the world. There are so many great leagues across the world. Whether it's in Europe, South America, even in Asia, and obviously the United States with the MLS. And look, I've provided some context as to why I support Man City. Born and raised in Manchester, went to a school where pretty much everyone was a Manchester United fan. I wanted to be different. I picked Manchester City. I stand by my decision. Um, but I have favourite teams in other countries. So, I mean, let's start a bit closer to home, north of the border in Scotland, a team that I've always admired in the Scottish League, are Celtic. And obviously, you know, in terms of British football teams, they are, Celtic and Rangers probably are amongst the most famous football teams from the UK and around the world. Indeed, at one point, I believe Celtic may well still be in the top five in terms of the most supported teams worldwide. A team that has obviously a strong connection to Irish diaspora. Of course, those of you that know the history of football, and I know Genetic ACGT was, I was teaching him about the history of Celtic FC the other day. They were founded by Irish migrants in Scotland. So, Celtic FC have a strong connection to Irish communities worldwide, and, especially in America with a big Irish American community and those who are descendants of Irish, Celtic FC are a big team. It's a team I greatly admire. They were if you know your footballing history, they were the first British team to win the European Cup, otherwise now known as the UEFA Champions League, when they beat Inter Milan 2-1 in the 1967 European Cup final in Lisbon, in Portugal. That team, famously to this day, referred to as the Lisbon Lions. Another unique feature about that team: every member of that team was born and raised within a 30-mile radius of Celtic Park, which is Celtic FC's home stadium. Other highlights: they reached the 1970 European Cup final, but lost to Feyenoord, and then reached the 2003 UEFA Cup final, beating Liverpool and Blackburn Rovers en route to the final, where unfortunately after extra time they lost 3-2 to FC Porto, who were managed by a then unknown manager by the name of Jose Mourinho. And
Lucy.
as we know, and as we know, the next season in 2004, he guided FC Porto to Champions League victory. And let's just say, with regards to Jose Mourinho, the rest is history. But Celtic FC, definitely a famous football team. They've had some great players over the years. My particular favourite would probably be someone like Henrik Larsson, of course. The King, as they call him in those parts of the world, the King of Kings. Um, or maybe, for example, Shinsuke Nakamura. Had some um, memorable nights with Celtic. Um, yeah, and in recent times we've had a bit of a Man City contingent rock up at Celtic. At the moment, Celtic's number one keeper is one Kasper Schmeichel. Obviously, he famously used to be between the sticks at Man City and at Leicester City. Prior to that, replacing Joe Hart, who retired just the previous season. Again, another former City City star. Um, but before I move on to other teams, mate, what about you, Tom? Scotland. Do you have a favourite Scottish team?
Um, well, this is going to be quite interesting actually. Because um, I actually quite like Rangers.
Oh
Uh,
dear.
yeah. Um, yeah, I do. I actually quite like Rangers. In terms of, you know, I think it's just in terms of I liked the story of Rangers because they had to fight back to get into the championship. They were relegated all the way to the bottom, and they had to fight their way back. And in a way, they're still sort of seen as an underdog to Celtic because Celtic seem to win more championships than they do. And to me, it gets a little bit boring seeing Celtic win the championship all the time. Bit like it gets boring seeing City win the championship all the time. But I digress. Um, you know, it's nice for another team to win it, and no other team's going to really challenge Celtic apart from Rangers. So I just liked the Rangers story.
Well, this season
Um,
might be a bit
go on. So.
different because Aberdeen have made a really good start to
Oh,
the
have
season.
they? Have they? All right. I've not really kept up to date with the
But,
Scottish
but
season this
Celtic have been
season.
Celtic haven't been doing well, but Rangers do still have the record of winning the Scottish League title 55 times. But of course, my team, Celtic, in Scotland, have a sort of link to your club. Of course, well, many of your players have come to us and vice versa, or managed us. Um, Obviously, Gordon Strachan is one name. Roy Keane's another name that's been associated with Celtic. Of course, Henrik Larsson played for both Celtic and Manchester United. David Moyes played for Celtic, managed your team,
Yeah.
and with Rangers, of course. One of your former managers, Mr. Sir Alex Ferguson, used to play for Rangers.
Yes, of course, of course. Yeah. Uh, yes. But yeah.
And
So
of course, from a wrestling perspective as well, Drew McIntyre, a very well known Glasgow Rangers supporter,
yeah.
as
Uh,
well as Gordon Ramsay as well.
yeah. But yeah, so I just quite like the Rangers story of them having to fight from the bottom to get back to the top, and yeah, I quite like the story of them.
Well, I,
So
I
that's
actually
that.
thought.
That's why I much prefer Rangers to Celtic.
Well, I was going to say, I actually thought you were going to say you were more of an Aberdeen fan, obviously owing to the connection between Aberdeen and Sir Alex
Yeah,
Ferguson, who of
yeah,
course guided them to victory in the Cup Winners' Cup, where I believe they beat Real Madrid in the final.
yeah. I mean,
Which
of
was seen as one of the great underdog
yeah,
stories.
of course. I have a fondness for Aberdeen for that reason, but I was sort of talking about my choice between Celtic and Rangers, and I do quite like Rangers, but of course, being a United fan, of course, I have a soft spot for Aberdeen. Of course, I do. And if it, well, what you've just said, they've had a good start to the season, and long may that continue. Hopefully, they can maybe challenge for the title. Who knows? But yeah, um, that's it for
And
the Scottish
just
teams
to
for
add
me.
an interesting point, I mentioned Gordon Ramsay. I believe he was also a former youth player for Glasgow Rangers.
Interesting.
So so they do have a lot of support, and obviously a lot of famous players have you know played for both teams as well. But that's Scotland. So
Yeah,
let's
I mean,
move a little bit.
uh,
Why don't we cross the channel over into France then?
yeah,
So, for me, my favourite French league team, and I have to be specific here because team I'm not in France, but they play in the French league, and of course, I'm talking about AS Monaco. As you'll know, but for those who may not know, Monaco is itself a principality. It's another country, but AS Monaco, obviously being the only football team in Monaco, there is no Monaco or Monegasque league, so they opted to play in the French league. I mean, they could have chosen to play in the Spanish league, but geographically, I think they're closer to. Well, of course, yes, they're closer to France, so they play in the French league. Yeah, Monaco is one of my favourite French teams. I've liked them pretty much since the 90s. One of my earliest memories was I can't remember which season it was. I think it was the 97-98 season when they knocked out Manchester United from the Champions League. Trezeguet scoring a screamer of a goal. But many great players over the years have gone through the ranks. At Monaco, some that we all know too well, like David Trezeguet, Kylian Mbappe, Thierry Henry, Fabien Barthez, uh, Bernardo Silva, of course, Fernandinho, all to name but a few. They're a team with a great history. They've reached two European finals, a Cup Winners' Cup final, which they lost. I can't remember the year or to who. And of course, they reached I mentioned previously, the 2004 Champions League final, coached by Didier Deschamps, who, of course, would go on to great success with the French national team. Um, they reached the 2004 Champions League final where they lost to Jose Mourinho's FC Porto. But yeah, Monaco's my favourite team. I know they're coming to play against Arsenal in the Champions League at some point. I will try and get a ticket for that, as I will try and get a ticket for the Celtic game at Aston Villa in the Champions League if I can. But what about you, Tom? Who's your favourite French team?
um, interesting one this. Um, but my favourite French team is Lyon.
Okay.
Um, mainly because as you know, a lot of you will be aware if you're a football fan. Memphis Depay was at Manchester United. He joined in 2015, and of course, after he left Manchester United, he went to Lyon. Um, and I was quite a fan of Memphis Depay, and I was quite sad when he left. I rated him. I thought he was a cracking player, and when he left, I thought, why are we letting him go? So basically, because I was a fan of Memphis Depay, I decided to follow his career. Obviously, I was still a Man United fan, always will be. Um, but I decided to follow Leon on the side because of Memphis Depay. Literally, it was because of Memphis Depay. Um, so yeah, literally that is the reason why I'm a fan of Leon. And even after he left Leon, because I kept up with Leon, and because I'd been watching Leon for a little while because of Memphis being there. Even after he left, I have kept up to date with Leon to a certain point. But yeah, that's literally my sole reason for being a fan or liking Leon. Because Memphis Depay went there, and I was a fan of Memphis Depay. I've literally got no other affiliation with Leon whatsoever. Um,
And just to let you know quickly, their record in European competition, they reached Champions League semi-finals twice in 2009, 2010, and 2019-2020, where, yeah, unfortunately, along the way, they knocked out my team. They reached the semi-finals. They reached the semi-finals of the Europa League in 2016-2017 season. Semi-finals of the UEFA Cup Winners' Cup in the 1963-64 season, but they did win the now defunct Intertoto Cup in 1997. So they effectively have one more European trophy win, well, or certificate, whatever it was they used to give for the Intertoto Cup uh, over Monaco. But yeah, they had a big win this evening, I believe, 5-1. I believe AC Milan won theirs, but we'll go to Italy shortly. But let's head over to let's cross the, is it the Pyrenees? I think, yeah, and let's head over to Spain. Sunny Spain. Who is your favorite Spanish team?
my favorite Spanish team. Well, um, I'm not. Most people would, when it comes to Spanish teams, it's either going to be Barcelona or it's going to be Real Madrid. No, I'm not. I don't like either. I'll be quite honest. I don't like either. My favorite team in the Spanish league, uh, Atletico Madrid.
Okay, okay.
Um,
They've had some success in recent years. I think
um,
in the Europa League, especially. Famously, they won the first edition of the rebranded UEFA Cup. When it was rebranded to the Europa League, they beat Fulham in the final,
yeah.
um, and they reached two Champions League finals where, unfortunately, on both occasions they lost to Real Madrid.
Yeah. I mean, if I, my reasonings for being a fan of Atletico Madrid, very similar to why I'm a fan of Leon. Not because of Memphis Depay, but because of another former Man United player that went to Atletico Madrid. He went to not straight after he left United. He went to Villarreal first, but after that he went to Atletico Madrid, and it is the man.
Let me guess, Diego Forlan.
Yes, Diego Forlan. I was a massive fan of Diego Forlan when he was at United. I thought he was a cracking player, and again, it was one of them that I was like, why are we letting him go? But yeah, I sort of followed his career for a little bit after he left United because I was a fan of his.
Well,
Um,
it's
and
coincidental that you mentioned Diego Forlan. I don't know if you follow the sports news or the tennis news,
oh
but
yes, I
Diego
saw that
Forlan
earlier. Yeah.
is about to make his debut as a professional tennis player
Yes,
now,
yeah,
which is
in a Uruguayan tournament.
yeah, which is very interesting
Yes,
because
very
obviously
interesting.
he's 45, but this isn't
Yeah,
like a. So they have what's called a tennis masters circuit. Masters usually over a certain age, but this is at the actual full ATP professional level. So that's
interesting.
quite an interesting and fascinating story. But
Yeah,
my favourite Spanish team may not come as a surprise, but Barcelona. It's one of those teams that I actually followed since the 90s. And indeed, look, Barcelona do have history, but a bit like, my team, Man City, much of their history was created probably more in recent times, certainly from a European perspective. So Barcelona had won about, in their history, they've won three Cup Winners' Cups, UEFA Cup Winners' Cups, but they had never won the Champions League or the UEFA Cup, the European Cup. They didn't win it for the first time until 1992. which they won at Wembley. They beat Sampdoria in the final. And there was a certain player in that team who went on to be a very prominent manager, who is now the current manager of my club. Don't know if you've heard of him. His name's Pep Guardiola.
No, I don't
Uh,
know him.
and then, it'd be some time, about 14 years later, before they won the Champions League again, when they beat Arsenal 2-1 in the final. We were talking about this the other day at the Stade de France, in a very famous final where, a player that we mentioned earlier, Henrik Larsson, contributed to the two winning goals. He provided the assist to both Samuel Eto'o and Giuliano Belletti uh, as they came back from 1-0 down to beat Arsenal 2-1 to win the European Cup. And then they'd win it a further three. I can't hear you there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. So I said on both those occasions in 2009 and 2011, a Pep Guardiola managed Barcelona team beat a team that you're very familiar with in the final.
Who might that be?
I think you know.
Surely it can't be my team.
It was your team.
Oh,
You've
right.
forgotten already?
No, I hadn't really forgotten.
You're just pretending.
Yeah.
To be fair, they were not good finals for you, were they? You were very much, to use a scientific term, spanked on both occasions by Barcelona.
Yes.
And indeed, as I would describe them, two Messi-inspired finals on both occasions. I would say both those finals really cemented both Guardiola and Messi's legacies, or at least set them on that path. But yeah, Barcelona, one of the not only the giants of Spanish football, the giants of European football and world club football. They are a famous football team wherever you go in the world. Their strip, instantly recognisable. So many iconic players over the years have donned the red and blue of Barcelona, from Ronaldinho to Eto'o to Henrik Larsson to Ronaldo, as in the Brazilian Ronaldo, to Luis Figo before he became a traitor and went to Real Madrid, Rivaldo, Thierry Henry,
Messi,
Messi, of course, Sergio Aguero,
Neymar,
Neymar, Suarez, so many. I think I said Diego Maradona, didn't I?
Iniesta.
Yeah, Iniesta as well. Pure.
Xavi.
Yeah, exactly.
Xavi.
We could go on forever and ever and ever. So many iconic players have played for Barcelona. But let's move on to a smaller league before we go back to some of the bigger leagues. Let's go to Spain's Iberian neighbours in Portugal.
Okay.
So for me, Benfica, historically one of the big successful teams in Portuguese football, haven't won obviously the big prize for a very long time. Since the 60s, some say there's a curse on that team. But, of course, one legendary player firmly associated with that club, the late, great Eusebio. But yeah, Benfica, my favourite Portuguese team. Not an awful lot I can say other than that. What about yourself? Is there a Portuguese team you might like?
I mean, as a United fan, my favourite Portuguese team should be quite obvious.
I would Sporting Lisbon, maybe.
Yes.
Yep, Sporting Lisbon. So,
Hang on.
if I
think it is. Hang on.
to figure out why you might, well, or to give them their proper name, Sporting Club de Portugal, I think probably your reasoning there, maybe because of their association with the one Cristiano Ronaldo.
Well, it's not. Yeah. Obviously, Ronaldo is a United legend, and as much as I don't like him anymore, you can't deny.
Of course, Peter Michael.
Can't deny that he's Ronaldo's a legend, obviously. But it's not just that. I mean, we've had obviously as a United fan, Ronaldo came from Sporting CP, and of course our current captain Bruno Fernandes came from there as well. So of course a lot of connection between United and Sporting. So yeah, that is literally why they're my favourite Portuguese team.
Great, great, and of course, Peter Schmeichel before he did good in his career and came to Manchester City. Uh,
Boo.
After he left Manchester United, went to Sporting Lisbon. Then I think he went to Aston Villa, and then he came to us. So he did good in the end. He did good in the end. Let's leave Portugal now and go to one of the big, one of the big leagues of European football. Of course, I am talking about Serie A in Italy. Again, a host of iconic teams that play in that country. Iconic players over the years. But for me, there's one team that I have followed since forever in Italy, and that is AC Milan. The most successful Italian team in terms of Champions League titles. Again, so many legendary players have passed through their doors in their iconic San Siro stadium, which is falling apart, but nevertheless still an iconic stadium. Um, yeah, AC Milan. What can I say about that team? Yeah, again, who's who of football? Maldini. Uh, so many people. Ronaldinho has played for them as well. Even David Beckham, once upon a time, lest we forget, played for AC Milan as well. Having a bit of a brain fog at the moment in terms of naming players, but look, they are deeply embedded in the history of Italian and European football. AC Milan. Um, and of course, there's a strong Manchester City connection there because their colour scheme inspired Manchester City's away strip of red and black. But what about you, Tom? Who's your favourite Italian team?
My favourite Italian team, and it might come as a shock, it might not do. But my favourite team, Italian team, is Roma. Um,
Interesting.
and
Why Roma?
literally because Roma, um, one of my favourite football players of all time used to be at Roma. In fact, he was at Roma for most of his career. Um, that being
Let me guess.
Francesco Totti.
Okay.
Um, you know, yeah, I really liked Totti, and he was one of the only reasons I really watched Roma. Um, of course, in later years, of course, Mourinho went and managed Roma, although not a huge fan of Mourinho. Respect the guy for what he's done as a manager. I think he's quite funny. But in terms of the man himself, not a massive fan. But of course, there's that connection there as well. But the main reason, and the reason I started, liking Roma and watching Roma was because of Francesco Totti. In my opinion, one of the most emotional retirements in football. I've watched it time and time again, and seeing how emotional, like literally everybody got, including the man himself. I've never seen a retirement that emotional. The only one that sort of nearly rivals it is Beckham's. But yeah, that's literally the sole reason, Francesco Totti.
Interesting. I mean, if I could say, a player that really stood out for me during his time at AS Roma was Gabriel Batistuta. Obviously, somebody who we will obviously be aware of from an English perspective because he was the one that was responsible for, well, you could say, no, he wasn't. No, that was Diego Simeone, of course, wasn't it, with the whole David Beckham red card at the '98 World Cup. But yeah, Roma, interestingly, didn't win a European trophy until a couple of years ago when Mourinho guided them to success in the Conference League, and they were the first team to win the new Conference League, as it were. Um, and of course, a one Mo Salah.
Mm.
cut his teeth at Roma before he went on to Liverpool. But yeah, no, Serie A, I say this with a bit of trepidation because obviously Inter Milan did get to the final in 2023 where they lost to my team. But, um, I believe the last time an Italian team won the Champions League was 2010 with Mourinho when Inter Milan won the treble. Um, and prior to that, I believe it was 2007 when AC Milan beat Liverpool in the final in Athens.
Mm.
And of course, AC Milan famously won the Champions League in 2003 on penalties. First time the Champions League had ever been decided on penalties when they beat Juventus uh, at Old Trafford. But okay,
Just
let's
before we move
let's
on,
head out.
hang on a minute. Just going back to Totti for a minute. Just looked him up because I was just interested in finding something out. In his senior career, indeed, he never went to any other team. He was with Roma from 1993 to 2017. Amazing. That's over 20 years. You know,
619 appearances and 250.
yes, exactly. 609 appearances, 250 goals, 24 years he was at Roma. No wonder his retirement was so emotional. I didn't really, obviously, I've started watching Roma because of Totti, but I never realised that he literally, from the start of his senior career to the end of it, didn't go anywhere else. Just stayed at Roma. I mean, that's loyalty for you. That is loyalty for you, and it's one of the reasons why I like him. But yeah, yeah. I just wanted to point that out. Anyway, what league next?
Sure. Before we go over to one of the other big leagues, I thought why don't we pay a visit to the Netherlands? Um, so my favourite team from the Netherlands, simple one, Ajax. Big fan of their contribution to the style of play, the total football, as it were. Big names associated with them over the years. Johan Cruyff, Edgar Davids, uh, Ruud Hullet, Kanu, Dennis Bergkamp, even your former goalkeeper Edwin van der Sar. Uh, but yeah, what about yourself?
Myself, same as you, Ajax. Um, you know, I just really like the team, and of course, at the moment, obviously United a bit of a connection there, obviously with Ten Hag, and we've had a fair few Ajax players as well come over to us, so there is that connection there. But I've always liked Ajax, even before Ten Hag was at United, and we brought some Ajax players over. I always liked Ajax. Always, you know, they always managed to get some decent players, and I just liked, whenever I watched them, I liked their style of play, and yeah, always, always been a fan of Ajax. So yeah, same as you, Ajax.
Yeah, yeah. And then let's go over to the Netherlands neighbours. Another of the big leagues per se, Germany. Straightforward for me. Again, another team that I followed from the early years in the 90s through to now. And one that's developed a bit of a connection with Manchester City in recent years. Bayern Munich, of course, the most successful team in German history. Of course, managed by Vincent Company, my team's former captain. Once upon a time, managed by Pep Guardiola, of course, as well. And where, home of current England captain Harry Kane. What about yourself?
My favourite German team. A little bit of a difficult one for me, really, this, because I've got two teams that I really like in the German league. But if I had to say which one just sort of was just ahead, I would have to say RP Leipzig. Uh,
Okay.
I really like RP Leipzig. I I mean, of course, if I think I'm right in saying this. Timo Werner used to play for Leipzig, or plays for them,
Yeah.
or used to play for them. I can't remember, and I quite like Timo Werner. I, I rated him until he went to Chelsea, and then when he was at Chelsea, he was like, I was like, what the fuck's happened to Timo Werner? Um, but yeah,
Now, I obviously am not a fan of Timo Werner, but there you go.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I've always liked RB Leipzig. I'm the sort of person that likes to support the underdogs per se, and not go for like an obvious team. And when I like to follow the different leagues, and I always choose sort of an underdog. And with the German league, I didn't really have a United connection per se with any of the teams, unlike obviously Lyon with the French league, and Lisbon with the Portuguese league. So I just went with I just thought, you know what, I'm going to watch Leipzig because they're a bit of an underdog, and I've just liked them ever since. There's
And
been a few players that I've liked at Leipzig as well, and yeah, so Leipzig are my team in the German league.
sure, sure. And yeah, just to clarify, Timo Werner actually is on loan from Leipzig at Tottenham Hotspur. So yeah. Um, okay, I mean we've done basically the European leagues, and to excuse my ignorance, I don't follow Brazilian or Argentinian club football enough to kind of pick a team.
I think there's
And if I
only
was gonna,
for me there's only one league left now.
well, there's two that I've got to mention, but
Right.
I was just going to say if I had to choose a team in Argentina, the only team that I really know is Boca
Yeah,
Juniors.
same here.
And I suppose in Brazil it would probably be Santos, by virtue of, um, Pele playing for them. But the other two leagues I was going to mention that I have a bit of an affection for are the MLS
Of course.
in the United States and the J League in Japan. Now, with all due respect, they're not leagues noted for their world class style of play, but they offer some entertainment, and nevertheless, particularly with the MLS, it's seen as a place for a lot of big stars from European football, where they go to kind of see out their days, and bang in some goals and maybe pick up a trophy or two along the way. Obviously, David Beckham kind of really started that trend when he went to LA Galaxy. Um, and obviously, how can we forget, uh, Lionel Messi at the moment, with Inter Miami, who have now qualified for the Club World Cup that's going to be held in the United States, with Miami being one of the venues. So, in my honest opinion, no coincidence that, Messi will be playing in one more World Cup, as it were, before he calls it a day. But yeah, if I had to pick my favourite MLS side, by virtue of the fact that I have an affection for New York teams in all of the major sports, and given that they are also a sister club of Manchester City as part of the City Group, it would have to be New York City FC. What about yourself?
My if I had to pick my favorite MLS team, um, you know, fairly obvious the reasons why. LA Galaxy. Um, like I said, the reasons are obvious. It's very similar to, um, Atletico Madrid with Diego Forlan, and Memphis Depay with Leon. Of course, Beckham going to LA Galaxy. You know, always been a massive fan of Beckham. Wish that we'd kept him, to be honest. But yeah, always been a massive fan of Beckham. Followed his whole career until he retired at PSG. Still a massive fan of him, to be honest. And yeah, so LA Galaxy. it was the first time I ever really found out about the MLS when he went to LA Galaxy, and then I started watching it, and it wasn't the standard that you get in the Premier League or some of the other leagues that I'd watched football in, but it was still great to watch Beckham. Um, um, I, I've I still support LA Galaxy. Well, I still like LA Galaxy, and I still sort of, to a certain extent, stay up to date with them. But I focus more on now Inter Miami, of course, because they are owned by David Beckham. Um, and literally, and I like Lionel Messi as well. So yeah, LA Galaxy. I like LA Galaxy, and I'm now starting to follow Inter Miami as well.
And what do you think about the MLS overall in terms of the standard of the football?
It's not well. More and more more and more big names seem to be going to the MLS now. It seems to be getting bigger, but the standard of football still isn't great.
No, I can see that. I mean, before we move on to the J League, just an honorary mention for other teams in other leagues. I mean, the only other team that I could say I pretty much have an affection for, outside of the leagues that I mentioned, would be, sorry, just excuse me, I'm just washing my hands, would be Galatasaray
Mm.
in Turkey. But, a little bit of a controversial team there because of their infamy of their fan base. I mean, other leagues around the world, in Europe, I can't really claim to know a lot about. I suppose if I had to pick a Belgian team, I would pick Anderlecht because of their link with um, Vincent Company. But yeah, you said you wanted to mention one more league. Did I mention it? Was that the
Yeah, the
MLS?
MLS. Yeah.
Sure. Before I do move on to the J League in Japan, we do need to mention the other big league that seems to be poking around, the Saudi Pro League. Now, admittedly, I have not watched a single Saudi Pro League game. I don't intend to watch a single Saudi Pro League game. That is nothing to do with the politics of Saudi Arabia or anything to do like that. But I do not see it, with all due respect, as a viable league. I think any player that goes to that league is basically effectively saying that is the end of their top level career. By that measure, why Cristiano Ronaldo still continues to get picked for the Portugal side is beyond me. Jordan Henderson, I know, has been recently recalled to the England team, but no doubt him going to the Saudi League from Liverpool, I think, damaged his career. I think it was a massive surprise when Neymar decided to go when he still had a lot of years left at the top level.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, if you're being offered the ridiculous money that the Saudi League is offering you, you would be hard pressed to say no. But what's your view on the Saudi League?
Hate it.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I
just
don't know
think
what it offers really.
I just think it's in years to come. I think it's going to ruin football because as years go by, younger and younger players are going to start going to the Saudi league mainly because of the money, and you're going to have the likes of the other big leagues in Europe losing out to big names because of money, because they can't offer the money that the Saudis can. They they are ruining, in all fairness, more than one sport, because I don't agree with the Saudi shows that WWE do either. You know what I mean? So it just
And,
seemed to be,
and boxing.
yeah, they just seem to be taking
Um,
over, and it's all to do with money, and nobody can really rival that. The only other country that could possibly rival it is the Qataris. So
Sorry,
yeah,
which
don't
other
like
country
it.
did you say you broke? The sound broke out a little bit there. Which other country did
I
you say?
said the only other country that could rival the Saudis in terms of money is the Qataris.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, obviously, I don't want us to get into another political debate. I think we've
No.
done politics for tonight.
Yeah.
But obviously, there are legit criticisms of the Saudi regime, and it's important to kind of clarify as well and contextualize for our listeners and the watchers that whatever criticisms we have about the Saudi regime is just the Saudi regime. It's not a criticism of the people of Saudi Arabia at all. Ultimately there are many, many fans of football and of wrestling and of boxing and other sports that are being hosted there, who, you know, uh, I don't want, I am wary that if we took those sports away from there or whatever, it would deny them the opportunity to experience world class sport. But, many would argue that the Saudi regime are using this as a what's called sports washing to kind of boost their image. But nevertheless, let's get away from that. I think in terms of the football itself, yeah, I don't rate the Saudi league. I
No.
don't see the point, and it has ruined football. I mean, in a way, yeah. Neymar still had an awful lot to give at a top level, and yet you're never going to see Neymar win a Champions League now. Probably, I don't think he has won a Champions League, has he? No, he hasn't. So you're never going to see Neymar win a Champions League.
No.
Um, yeah, Cristiano Ronaldo could have still hacked it in Europe, but this is the thing. It goes back also. I have this debate with my postman, who's a Rangers fan, and obviously he's not keen on the fact that I'm a Celtic fan, but he's okay with me being a City fan. And we talk about all these big players, rather than they talk about how much they want to be at the top level, even at the end of their careers, but they're prepared to go over to America or to Saudi Arabia for a big payday. And look, I get it. It's a nicer climate. It's an easier league, and they can just count down the clock, as it were. But let's be brutally honest. If Cristiano Ronaldo, after he left Manchester United, really wanted to play European football, wanted to play in the Champions League, simply put it, there were teams out there that he could have gone to. He could have gone to Italy. He could have gone back to Portugal. He could have gone to the Netherlands. Dare I even say it? Celtic and Rangers are an option if you want to play in the Champions League. But they don't want to. Nobody wants to do that. And that's what I really hate about these leagues, like the Saudi Pro League and the MLS. It's really pushed out the way some of these smaller leagues in Europe. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, it absolutely has.
I mean, if you let's put it this way: if you were like coming to the end of your time, like say you're a professional player, you were playing in one of the big leagues in Europe and one of the top four teams, and you were coming to the end of your time, obviously, people do it for different motivations. But if you really still wanted to play at the top level in the Champions League, if that's what you truly believe in, would you not want to go to one of the smaller leagues in Europe, try and play for one of their top teams, and try and still play in the Champions League that way?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
You know, and I don't understand why they couldn't do that. Yeah, okay, they might, Cristiano Ronaldo may have not liked the idea of spending his weekends playing, in icy cold Dunfermline or Kilmarnock or Aberdeen or Dundee. But as I said, playing for Celtic FC, a big team, in the Champions League, a big brand name, yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame players don't see that. But yeah, I don't like the Saudi league. I haven't watched it. I don't intend to watch it. It offers nothing to me. Um, and I really don't care about it.
No.
Really don't care about it. So that brings me to the last league then. I don't know how much you follow it, and I can't say I follow it avidly, but I've been to a couple of J League games whenever I'd go out to Japan to visit family and friends. Now, originally I used to follow a team called FC Tokyo, where obviously they're based in Tokyo, Bizarrely, they used "You'll Never Walk Alone" as their club anthem. I know that's an anthem used by Celtic, but obviously it's we associate it more with Liverpool FC. So yeah, but these days I tend to follow Yokohama F Marinos. Now Yokohama is a small port city just outside of Tokyo. I mean, some people would say, oh, it's essentially within the Tokyo limits. It's part of Tokyo, but it isn't. It is a city in its own right. Um, their home stadium is the Yokohama International Stadium, where the FIFA 2002 World Cup final was held. But crucially, the reason why I have switched my allegiance to Yokohama F Marinos is because they too, like New York City FC, are owned by the City Group. So I effectively have to support them out of obligation because they're our sister team. And coincidentally, we do have sister teams in India and in Uruguay who I suppose I would have to support by default. Um, but I don't support City sister team in France or Italy or Spain. But yeah, do you know anything about the J League?
No, not really. I don't really follow it, to be honest.
Is there a team that you would pick if you had to?
I mean, the only one I would pick, mainly because it's somewhere I want to go, FC Tokyo. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, that's literally just because I want to go to Tokyo one day. Like, that's literally my only reason.
well, when you do end up going to Tokyo, let me know. We'll go. We'll have a good time. But I'm just having a look at the city groups. You know, teams. Obviously, they've got teams all over the world. If you take your pick in China, it's Shenzhen Peng City FC, Girona, obviously as we know in La Liga, ES2 in the French league, Palermo in Italy, Lommel SK in Belgium, um, Mumbai City FC if you ever find yourself in Mumbai, India, Montevideo City FC in Uruguay if you ever find yourself in Uruguay, and Melbourne City FC, Melbourne I should say, Melbourne City FC in Australia, and Bahia in Brazil. So yeah, those are the teams really.
Mm.
Football is a global game. Don't know if anyone else who's still there in the chat listening, who are your favourite teams. Tell us who your favourite team is in the country where you live or where you're born or wherever. And do you have favourite teams in other countries? Let us know.
Yeah.
Let us know. But yeah, that's all I have to say on the club teams.
Yes. We are fast running out of time, so we'll get on to the Chris Hoy thing. Um, yeah. I don't know too much about soccer teams, so I can't really comment. It says genetic. No, that's fine. That's fair enough. So of course I mean, you must have heard the if you oh, hang on a minute. If you if you've seen the news over the last sort of week, you will have of course seen the tragic and very sad news coming out from Chris Hoy and his wife. Chris Hoy has been diagnosed with terminal cancer. He's been given 2 to 4 years or 3 to 4 years?
2 to 4 years.
2 to 4 years is his prognosis. And that is sad enough. I mean, Chris Hoy, if you don't know, is a cycling legend in Britain. He has also been knighted. He is Sir Chris Hoy. He's a legend here in the UK. One of the greatest cyclists, if not the greatest cyclist we've ever had in the Olympics. But if that wasn't enough, him being diagnosed with terminal cancer, his wife unfortunately, not long after he was diagnosed with cancer, was diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis. That is, I believe it's a degenerative, can't say the word, um, disease, meaning that she will, unfortunately, I believe it is a death sentence. Um, so yeah, it's just absolute tragic news. I mean, if it's not enough that Chris got diagnosed with cancer and has 2 to 4 years left to live, his wife has been diagnosed with also a terminal illness. And I'm not sure if they have kids, but if they do, my heart goes out to them because I mean I cannot imagine having one parent be diagnosed with a terminal illness. Never mind having both of them within the same week be diagnosed with terminal illnesses. It's just something that I can't even comprehend. Something that happens once in a blue moon. It's just tragic. It's sad. My heart goes out to the family. My heart goes out to the kids if they've got kids. I apologise for not doing the research that I should have done. Um, and yeah, my heart goes out to Chris and his wife. I hope you have the best life that you've got left. You absolutely deserve it. Um, and yeah, just love and support goes to Chris, his wife, and their family and friends.
Yeah, I mean, I feel particularly sad about this, obviously, given my connection with the Olympic Games. Even though I'm not an athlete, I feel a very oneness with the Olympic Games and the Olympic movement. And I had the good fortune to have seen Chris Hoy in person at a homecoming event after the Olympic 2012 Olympic Games, homecoming event in Manchester. Now, for those of you that don't know, Britain's National Cycling Centre is based on the Manchester City campus. So Chris Hoy was basically a resident of Manchester. It's where he kind of developed and refined his cycling skills. And as Tom said, he was Britain's most successful cyclist and Olympian until a fellow cyclist, Sir Jason Kenny, as well, another Knight of the Realm, um, beat his record at the Tokyo 2020 Games. But by all measures, he is one of our top three greatest Olympians of all time in terms of medals won at consecutive games, alongside Sir Jason Kenny and Sir Steve Redgrave. Um, Incredibly sad news. One of our great sporting icons. Incredibly sad news, and you know, I just heard today as well the news about the announcement of the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow and the what do you call it, the sports that have been announced for that, which will include I believe cycling is on the list, and that will be held at the appropriately named Sir Chris Hoy Velodrome. And I do sincerely hope he will be well enough and around to attend that in Glasgow. And indeed, his wife with her diagnosis as well, extremely sad news. I believe they have two young children. Um, they have a son and a daughter. So married, I believe he got married in to his um to his wife in 2010. But yeah, yeah, it's really really sad, really sad. I don't know what to say. It's yeah, it's just desperately sad news. And it's a stark reminder that something like cancer can affect anybody
Yeah.
at any time. And this is a man who is at the peak of his physical fitness. As I said, one of our greatest Olympians, greatest
Mm.
athletes, so young as well. Yes, he's 48, but still, that's still quite
Yeah,
young.
it is.
He's, you know, at the very least, he might make it to his 50th birthday, but obviously you know, he almost certainly won't make it to his 60th birthday or even his 55th birthday, and that is just incredibly sad. And as you said, I hope he has the best life that he has in the time that he has left with his family and with his friends. And yeah, our best wishes to Sir Chris, to Lady Hoy as well, his family and friends, and his many fans around the world. Devastating news. Devastating news.
Absolutely, absolutely, and yeah, very very sad, and
It is.
like I said, um, my heart goes out to his two kids. I mean, they now know that they will be losing both their parents probably within the next 5 years, and that is just devastating.
So with multiple sclerosis, I don't think it's a case of that it can't be managed. I mean, she has an aggressive form of multiple sclerosis, but I
It
don't necessarily think
yeah, I believe it does.
she's dying.
Unfortunately, it does. Um, it does end in death. Unfortunately, I believe. It might.
Mhm.
For some people it's quicker. For some people it is slower. But unfortunately, the end is death. But then, yeah. Unfortunately, that is. I mean, she might survive longer than 5 years. I don't know. But if it's an aggressive form, the likelihood is, unfortunately, them two kids are going to lose both their parents within the next 5 years, and that is something that no child should ever have to go through, and anybody for that matter. And like I said, my heart goes out to them, and yeah, that's all I can really say. Um,
I think maybe we should try and end on a more positive note. Why don't we discuss something a bit more happier per se, if we can, very quickly.
well, I've we've really we've run out of time. The only positive I can leave you on, ladies and gentlemen, is that um you know the only positive I can leave you on with, ladies and gentlemen, is that I is I'm trying to think of a positive thing to say here. Um, um,
Well, I'll give a piece of positive news.
go on.
I bagged myself a ticket for WWE Live on the 4th of November at the O2 Arena in London. If any of you who are watching or listening are attending, do let us know in the chat. It'd be good to know that some of our fans are going to be there. It'd be great to maybe catch up or something. But yeah, I'll be going to WWE Live. It's my first WWE show again in about, when did I last go to? It's in about 2 years. So the last one I went to was Clash at the Castle
In Cardiff.
um, in Cardiff, and just before that, I went to the house show that was at the O2 in May 2022, which was their first house shows in the UK, or first events in the UK since what do you call it? Since COVID. So yeah, it was good fun. Saw a lot of major stars there: Charlotte Flair, Ronda Rousey, Roman Reigns, Sheamus, Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley. Um, there was a bit of a funny incident with Bobby Lashley. I don't know if any of you remember a couple of years ago when he was doing a house show in Newcastle. he was just basically holding on to the side of the the ropes on the side of the ring, and the ring collapsed. So they had to halt the show whilst they fixed the ring. So he did this funny thing when he entered the ring, where he went to each of the ring ropes just to check that they were all fixed, and then gave a thumbs up to the crowd, which was pretty funny. But yeah, that should be good fun.
Yeah.
What other positive things can I leave you with? Look, we have talked about a lot of sad stuff this evening, and the one thing I would say to anyone listening, with things like health and cancer, it's important that you do get things checked out regularly. If you feel you're not well or something, get it checked out. Especially something with like prostate cancer, get it checked out. That's one. I want to go back to the point just quickly we talked about earlier. We should always be wary about the things we say and do and how it affects others. And I believe genuinely we should always strive to make our lives and those of others better. Um, there's a lot of shit going on in the world at the moment. Both home and abroad. And as my late mother always used to say, and others have said as well, it really doesn't cost anything just to be kinder to people. Um, you know, and treat others the way you'd want to be treated.
Very
And I
true.
think, obviously, what we have discussed a lot at length about, people like Hogan and the Undertaker is that we're just shocked that people who, with all due respect, have always portrayed themselves as being level-headed, role model type people teaching us to do good in the world, and then they've just turned out to be complete jerks.
Mm.
You know, don't be like them.
No. Um. Okay, well, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to episode 2 of What's the News. That is still the name of the podcast. Like I said to you in the first episode, um, please, if you've got any suggestions for the name of the podcast, please get them in the comments underneath on YouTube. And yeah, get them in on the Twitch chat while we're streaming as well. If we don't get any suggestions, we'll stick with What's the News. I quite like the name What's the News. To be honest, I just picked it on the fly.
Well, I would have named it "What's the Story,"
Yeah. That,
but I don't want us to get sued by
well,
Oasis.
that's the thing. But yeah, I just picked it on the fly, that name, and I cleared it with my co-host, and yeah, so that's where the names come from. But like I said, I'm open to suggestions if you have any suggestions, and if I feel that there's any that are better than what I've come up with, then potentially we might change the name of the podcast, but maybe not. But anyway, thank you for joining us for the second episode of What's the News, and we will be our third episode will be soon. So again, thank you for joining us, and it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
Good night.
Good night.